Sonane sir, start recording.
Yes, I have started, sir. Dishley sir, please proceed.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, good afternoon to one and all. I, Mr. Anil Disle, take this opportunity to introduce this session speaker, Dr. B.B. Ahuja, sir, Director, COEP, and topic of the session is Future of Engineering. So, let me introduce our today's speaker in short. Dr. Bharat Kumar Ahuja is a mechanical engineer and heading the COEP Pune in the capacity of the director and professor in production engineering and industrial management. He is having teaching experience of more than 32 years.
Yes. Sir, please, thank you. Me shuru karto, I'll just start my.
Okay, sir. So I request our today's speaker, Dr. Ahuja, sir, to please guide us. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Just give me a minute. I'll just share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir,
You
you
can
can.
directly share your screen.
Just a minute. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I take this opportunity first to convey my gratitude to Professor Hivrekar sir for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you who have joined this afternoon. And what we are going to present today is uh, future engineering or engineering the future, and what it means to be a teacher today and how we will be, or how we have to remodel ourselves, reinvent ourselves as teachers who can sustain the future. Because the way technology is rapidly advancing, it is ensuring that we also change with times, and we move with times, and we have a different role to play. And through this presentation, we want to suggest ways as to how one should be looking at education today, uh, which will be towards the end of the presentation. Uh, it's a short presentation, but we will keep some time for question and answers that you may want to ask us. Right, so, and at any time, if you have any question, if you think it's urgent, you can stop me in between. Otherwise, towards the end, we can take each of the questions and move ahead. So thank you once again for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts and views. Right. So people think it's magic, but we call it engineering. Engineer means to progress, to move forward, to move onward, to keep pace with technology. And let us understand what it is all about. Maybe there could be a couple of slides which you may have seen in my earlier talk, but that doesn't matter. The focus would be the future of engineering and how we are going to engineer our future. So let's take a look at what was not there a couple of years, a decade or decade and a half ago. So these are certain things which did not exist. The iPhone, the iPad, Kindle, Uber, Airbnb, Android, Oculus, Instagram, not even WhatsApp. And in these 15 years, life has changed completely. And if you see how technology is moving rapidly, it took 75 years for the telephone to reach almost the urban areas and also to some extent rural areas. I recall as a student, while we were staying in the hostel, we used to go to the STD booth. So at 9 o'clock in the night, the tariff was half of the regular tariff during the day. But if you made a call after 11 in the night, it was 1/4 of the tariff. So we used to wait outside the PCO booth, waiting for our turn to come. And before the STD lines came into existence, one had to book a trunk call. And you say, I want to book a trunk call to Sangli. And it would take at least 2 hours, 3 hours, the operator would connect. And the trunk call duration would be 3 minutes. When 3 minutes are coming to an end, she would intervene and say, do you want to continue or you want to stop talking? If you say continue, another 3 minutes. So it was like a recharge every 3 minutes where the operator was interrupting. Probably they could also hear our conversation, it seems. And then came a time where we had STD phones, but then the tariff was different. And today, so it took long time for the technology to reach us. Web, it took 7 years. Facebook took 4 years. Instagram, 2 years. But you look at this game, Pokemon Go, just 1 month, and it spread like fire. So over a period of time, receiving technology, understanding and implementing technology has had its own pace of evolution. So let us understand this question of a true partnership between education and technology. We as teachers make use of technology to teach technology. And how do we, as educational people in the system, envision our teaching environment in 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do we see ourselves? It's a big question mark. What is it that we need to do to sustain ourselves as teachers in time to come? When we talk of higher education, we as teachers must look at new subjects, subjects which we never learned as students. Look at newer methodologies, look at an interdisciplinary approach in whatever we are doing. If you look at the types of education today, there are basically 3 types: the formal education, the informal education, and the non-formal education. Formal education is what we are all conversant with. The education where we go to the class, it is more structured. We learn in a structured manner. We appear for exams, we get certified. Then there is the informal training, which comes through peer learning, through family occupation, which is enhancing one's skills. There may be certification, there may not be any certification. But we learn out of our own interest in understanding. And this kind of informal learning is highly motivated, it's spontaneous. It could be anywhere, anytime kind of training. Whereas the third type of training, the non-formal training, is that training which also happens in some way, in some uh, structured way, I would say. But that structure is like, to give you an example of non-formal training, is that we go, let's say I decide to go to the slum area and I say, okay, or I go to a village and I say, okay, let me teach these children who have no access to school some kind of, formal understanding of how to operate a computer, how to write using a Word document, or how to use an Excel sheet. So maybe basics of IT, or maybe some kind of training, maybe how to repair and maintain a computer, so it is some kind of training which is non-formal, and it may result in a certification. Yes, one can do that. You say, okay, I will come and teach you for 3 months, and the college will give a certification. It's more flexible. It is more oriented towards the student need. It has a defined purpose that I'm going to teach the people in the villages, in the slums. So that is some non-formal type of education, which is highly flexible, and uh, it may not result in a degree or a diploma, but I'm empowering people in the process, and you need highly motivated learners to understand what I'm trying to teach, and it could also happen, 12th standard student can go and teach mathematics to children in the village, which is of standard 1, 2 and 3, so the teachers also need not be well trained, but that is non-formal education. If you look at the challenges of this 21st century, we say that education has to be inclusive, sustainable. It must have a global thinking. Careers are going to become global. We all commonly say, world is a small village. And if careers are going to become global and careers are going to become unpredictable, then we need to make sure what is it globally that we need to have. And in the process, we have to ensure that we build capacity, capability, and competences and competitiveness amongst our students. If you look at what we are doing currently, there is overemphasis on analysis, little hands-on experience, disconnected from the real world. The labs are not so interesting. We have 8, 10 different labs to be performed. The syllabus says any 8. Out of any 8, any 2 will be studied. Only 5 or 6 will have experiments. Something like that. And these labs are defined
या
in
बहन की तुम्हारे
university
स्टेटस
curriculum.
ये जेগুলো है ना तुम्हारे
And though they are there in the university curriculum, the curriculum has been designed 2 years, 4 years ago. And we continue with the labs, because if you change and bring in new curriculum, new labs, which means again, every college has to invest into new equipment, machinery. The old one becomes obsolete, but that does not happen so very fast. And then there is little focus on communication skills. Of course, now with the new AICT regulation and guidelines, there is focus of communication skills right from the first year, but it was never there before. So what is it that we as teachers are feeding? For our students, education should be an opportunity, a gateway to success. The viable careers of tomorrow are changing so very fast, and we have to prepare our students keeping in mind the rate of obsolescence. Automation is taking over everywhere. Automation replacing humans, which means human beings will also need to enhance their skills to keep pace. If they want a job for themselves, they have to also adopt new roles. So I was a cashier at the bank. I was a bank teller. Now I have to be a system or a bank analyst, where I will gather data, interpret, and then showcase, how the bank can grow financially. So I have a different role to play. I will no longer be dispensing cash. I won't be a teller any longer, but I will be a system analyst who will gather all the data of transactions, analyze and present the financial growth of the bank. so I will have a different role to play. So we have to make sure that we as teachers have to reduce the growing disconnect between what skills students are having when they leave the college and what is needed by the industry. We need to bridge the gap. That is why the industry still says 55 or 50% of your graduates are not employable. It's not that there is no employment. There is employment, but they are not found up to the mark. So industry does says we don't want to have such people in whom we should invest, again train them and bring them up to the mark. They are not up to the mark. Whosoever is up to the mark and who can come up to our expectations, we will consider. The others we will not consider. So the question is of not unemployment, but employability, whether they have the right skill sets. We live in a world today which is man-made. Man-made devices, man-made artifacts, man-made material, man-made systems. We breathe naturally. Today, man-made oxygenators. Last year in the pandemic, people were needing ventilators, artificial respiration. We designed mechanical ventilators. So everything evolves around creating or taking raw materials from nature, manufacturing products, and providing products and advanced services to the end users. And what is it that we are trying to do in providing products and services to the end users? We are using our engineering knowledge. We come together with the clinicians, with the doctors, find out what is the need and how we can provide service or product to that need. So much so that when we are coming up with our own inventions and interventions, we are looking at nature and we are also trying to mimic nature, copy nature, so as to produce products and services which have been inspired by nature. And in time to come, each one of us, each teacher, each person in the industry will have to multitask, which means I must be trained in 2 or more fields, should have 2 or more specializations. One is not enough. Today, even many is not enough. You need engineers who know almost everything, which is impossible today. The way we are teaching, the way we are producing our engineering graduates, there's a big, big question mark before each one of us. In the future that we envision, maybe multi-core will allow us. Today we charge our mobile once in the day. In the night we put it for charging. And as that's the story of a new mobile, maybe a day and a half or every 2 days. As the mobile grows old, the frequency of charging increases, but in time to come, you charge only once a month. The Internet of Things, it is called Internet of Everything now, will allow us to dress in clothes that monitor all our activities, all our body parameters. Nanotechnology will be used where we manipulate the product in such a way that we are able to manipulate at the atomic, the atom or the molecule itself, and thereby produce smaller and finer products and devices which can go into the human body and also get digested into the human system. And while they are getting digested, they also throw out information. So we have to make sure in time to come, we have to strike a balance between what is convenient to us and also what is affecting our privacy. Today I enter into a chat with a friend, and I don't know if my chat is being understood by the system Why talk of a chat? You look at your email box. You want to send a mail, you send a mail, you get a reply. The system generates a small one-line reply. You can select that and say, okay, thank you, noted. Go ahead, good luck. So system is generating, that means somebody is understanding, interpreting our mails. A systemic response is generated which says, okay, this is how you should reply. But this is, so we have to ensure that there is a balance between what convenience we get and would it be at the cost of privacy? Will all our data, all our communication, whether in social domain or otherwise, whether I'm on Instagram or Facebook, wherever I am, whatever I'm saying, people are understanding, people are recording, and then trying to analyze and suggest my way of thinking, my way of behavior, my way of response. But somebody is extracting that data. And I don't want that to happen. I want convenience. I want to reach out, but not at the cost of my privacy. So the balance is very much important. The life of an engineer in the gig economy, that means I have to be a specialist. I must have an entrepreneurial spirit. The example that I learned and would like to share with you is that of Chris Gale. He works in the gig economy today. He gets paid by the Indian Premier League. He plays in the IPL. He gets paid by the Big Bash League. He plays in Australia. He gets paid by the Caribbean Premier League or whatever they call. He plays in the Caribbean islands. So wherever his expertise is required, a hard hitter, one who can change the game, accelerate the score. So if you're a specialist at something, people will invite. So in time to come, we also have to become specialists in not but more than one domains. And whosoever invites us, we'll go and teach, we'll go and deliver. I'm a specialist in data science. I will be invited by those who want me and want information of data science. And I can go as an expert. So I must become an expert, and people will allow and ask only experts to come in and give advice. That is the gig economy. So we have to make sure that we multiply our skills and competence, which is largely coming out of the information technology domain. So from application of knowledge, we want to move to application of learning. From being a dependent learner, we want to become an interdependent learner who can work in teams, understand the peers. Peer learning happens and you share with the team. So learning from the team and giving back to the team. Engineering today requires all-round development. We need to give our students foundation courses, large number of courses covering breadth. They should become specialists if they want. So we also give honors and minors by way of giving them the depth in a particular domain. We imbibe in them leadership qualities, teach them how to design, how to be creative, be curious at all times, should be able to communicate well, not only well within the professional team, but also be able to give back to society. We have what is known as ISR, individual social responsibility, giving back to society. There is corporate social responsibility, there is individual social responsibility. How I as an individual can give back to society. I must always be having diverse views, abreast of what is happening around the world. And I should be mentally, emotionally stable to deal with challenges in life. There is emphasis today on lifelong learning. Learning which is intelligent, which is based on scientific research skills, problem solving skills. They say skills which come from the head, the hand, and the heart. That is cognitive, psychomotor, and affective skills. Interpersonal skills, skills when you work in teams, how you respond in teams, and social and career building competencies. So a large variety of skills are required because it is skills, they say, which are missing today in our engineering graduates. So macro learning is what we learn in the classroom through courses, through MOOCs programs. But today what we need is instant learning, micro learning, instant. I want to understand something, I go to the net, I see, or I go to the YouTube, so you see the videos, read some articles on the net, and I'm able to understand what the topic is all about. But it is instant. I need it immediately. I'm not going to wait for 40 hours to learn the full course and then deliver. I need something to know something. I want to know it right now. But whatever information I get from the net or wherever search or whatever search I'm doing, is that useful? Is one question. And is that equally accurate? Is another question. But then we are used to this kind of scenario where we want everything instantaneously. The changing paradigm says that we are in a knowledge-based society. Yes, facts, data is important, rules are important. The business analytics bases itself, references itself on facts and data and rules. But today what we expect of teachers is skills, competencies, and attitudes. An attitude of learning lifelong and also working in heterogeneous environment. But the heterogeneous environment should be such that while I am learning and teaching, my students also learn, and that learning for the student becomes more and more personalized. So although I'm addressing the class, it is as though I'm addressing each and every student independently. That is how my teaching has to be in time to come. A constructivist education, an education where student and teacher evolve theory, evolve practice, and say this is something new which can be done using combination of theory and practice, and this is what we have evolved. So that is how the engineering is going to shift. We have to bring practice into engineering. We have to learn from research. Research which is based on evidence. Otherwise, we would be running like this on two legs. So we have to change our concept of engineering. How things were, it was hierarchical. So you had a managing director, you had a vice president or a president, you had an R&D manager who looks after R&D, a manager who looks after manufacturing, a manager who looks after quality control, a manager who looks after purchase, a manager who looks after sales and marketing. So every individual person had a defined role and there was a hierarchical structure. But today we say that we have to work in groups as a team. So the R&D manager and the manufacturing and the quality control manager will work closely with the purchase and the marketing manager to understand how we can bring about cost effectiveness by procuring material at the bare minimum cost process that material, produce a product, and then how we can position ourselves in the market with the new product. But most importantly, in time to come, I will have different roles. So I will not be simply working in teams, but it could be that yes, I am a team leader in one group, and in the second group, I am just an ordinary member. I am not a leader in that group or a team lead in the second group. So in one group, I am multitasking, I am leading a team. In the second group, I am not team leading, but I am a simple member of that group. So I will be working in 3-4 teams, maybe heading 1 or 2 teams, but in the remaining teams, I would just be a member. That is how things will happen. That is how working will happen in time to come. And it has already started now. What is the speed and magnitude of change today? This is from one of the survey reports, which I happen to read from the Deloitte report, which says that 5% of the existing professions will change every 2 years. There would be 5% decrease in the professions, not based on knowledge of information and communication, info communication. Whatever is essential, existential perspectives of professions, not based on ICT knowledge, will move around the labor force. 50% of today's jobs will be gone in next 10 years. New jobs will be created or have been created since 2008, and new jobs will continue to be created. And those new jobs are called as jobs in the category of alternative work. We started with digitization, changing from analog to physical or digital form. We moved on to digitalization, where we brought about pockets of or islands of automation. But today we talk of digitalization, where these pockets of or islands of automation are interconnected and the entire plant, so to say, is digitalized. Every communication happens in the digital mode. That is what digitalization is all about. So businesses are adapting quickly. 40% of the companies believe they have fully implemented or made significant progress in adopting AI and robotics. 77% of these companies believe in technology is creating better jobs, and 20% see job reductions. But the report also says 50% of the jobs will be gone away in next couple of years. There is retraining of people. People like us, we have to retrain ourselves, regroom ourselves. We have to reskill ourselves with newer modes, empower ourselves with newer modes of delivering information, delivering knowledge, delivering technology, using technology. It is also said through this survey that learned professional skills become outdated within 5 years. Why 5 years? Now it is less than 2 years. 32 times increase of relevant information is linked on the internet every year. The number of internet connections double every year. And then there is a continuous increase in the bandwidth. So what we have to do at such times, when bandwidth is increasing, we are using newer and newer methods. We have to ensure that we don't seek opportunities, but we seize opportunities. So the engineer would be, instead of following orders, he will be self-directed. He will be discovering and integrating rather than memorizing and repeating. Instead of listening and reacting, he would be communicating and taking responsibility for his decisions. From knowledge of facts, terms, and content, he will be understanding, abstracting that information and understanding the processes. He will move from theory to application of theory, from being dependent to being self-dependent and then interdependent. Technologies are cutting edge and bleeding. And most important is that we have to make our students think and innovate. How do we cope up with this change? So we need a mapping of what we have today and what we need. What we have today is information, and what we need to have is knowledge. Instead of rote teaching, we have to provide for lifelong learning. Instead of manipulation, we provide for creativity. Instead of mediocrity, we have to provide for excellence in whatever we do. Instead of saying beat the system, we have to add value at every stage as a teacher. We have to take the initiative. We have to be wise. There is no cramming but understanding of concepts. There is nothing like me first. It's always the team first. And we don't have to create job seekers, but we have to create job providers. We have to create entrepreneurs. So this is what we need today. And there are lots of opportunities. We have to think differently, next gen or net gen. Our students will be part of the future. You call it next gen or net gen. The toaster can also be used for making tea. Why only, if you're heating it, why only toast bread? You can also heat water and do something. You are creating steps. Can you provide storage below the steps? These are opportunities that one has to think of. Be innovative in every approach, in every sense. The variables, the technology that we use is going to be different. To know nothing and yet know everything. How water can be recycled. The fresh water can come in, but the water which is contaminated using reverse osmosis to some extent can be recycled. So the value in whatever we do is validation. How does that validation come through? In case of formal learning, it comes through certification. Whatever we learn, we go through an examination and we get ourselves certified. The validation comes, the transition or transformation comes through different thought processes. We had learnt of still photography. Today we talk of moving photography. You have a lady, a beautiful lady in this picture, but you can see that the wind is blowing her hairs. The wind is moving her locket or the pendant that she's wearing in her neck. In the picture above, you can see the person flipping. It's a still photograph, but yet a moving photograph. He's reading newspaper and he's changing papers. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality will soon enter the classroom along with the teacher. The teaching method and the learning experience will have to change as far as we are concerned as teachers. We have to go with AR, VR in our classrooms. Conduct practicals, give sessions in such a way that we are able to move ahead with times and give better clarity and understanding to our students. So 3D images will pop up. We can use AR, VR. We can assemble, disassemble products. Understand them better. at every time we have to think from the student's perspective as to how my student will learn. So although it's an heterogeneous classroom, I have to make sure that my education is customized. Are we learning to teach or teaching to learn? Would always be a question before us. And the answer would be that we would always be teaching to learn. While we are teaching, we also learn. We also get our concepts, fundamentals clear within ourselves, within our mind as we are teaching. So the teacher will no longer be a storehouse of information. A teacher will be a facilitator who will make sure that the knowledge that is given is understood by the students. They are able to apply that knowledge and solve problems. We have the right skill sets and attitudes built in our students with values. We need engineers today, but prior to that, we need good human beings, good citizens of our country who have values and ethics in life. So, engineer today means to ideate. To be an engineer today, we have to be innovative in our thought process. We have to do something different. We have to be enterprising. We have to keep looking for possibilities. We ourselves as teachers have to learn at faster rates than rate of change. We have to be in the business of human innovation, how we can empower our students at all times, developing and using human way technology, and focusing on not what we know, but not on what we own, but focus on what we know. That should be the mantra in the current times and also in the future. So from the moment we wake up, the time we go back, technology will exist. Today I see people, or I hear about people who wake up in the morning, wake up, the first thing that they do is see their mobile. What messages I have received on the SMS, WhatsApp, what emails I have received last night, what I have to do during the day. And even before leaving the bed, some people even start, this is what I get to hear, they start typing their messages and replying their messages. They have yet to get up from bed, yet to have bed tea. All of that has gone. I have yet to brush my teeth, but no, I get up and I first attend to my mobile. It has become so very important to me. The internet users are growing in leaps and bounds. Information, data is available today at the click of a button. And this has happened only in the last couple of years. And then devices are getting connected, controlling other devices, products, services. And not only getting connected, we have devices which have become smart. So earlier we were talking of automated products, automated manufacturing. Now we talk of smart manufacturing, intelligent manufacturing. That means the machine itself, using principles of machine learning and AI, we are able to control the machine in such a way that it will intelligently take a call on producing a component or not producing a component, and so on. So intelligence becomes seamless, ubiquitous to those who can afford and use state-of-the-art information technology. There would be seamless intelligence, seamless networking, getting connected so very easily. Connecting everything in time to come, every connection will be through the mobile. Today, most of the devices are already controlled, but everything will be on the mobile in a very unique and an uninterrupted manner. So what it means to be an engineer in the future, what it means to be engineering the future. What will it take to be an engineer in the future, to whom we have to create our students who are our products? How do we bring about a change in them? How can they sustain life? We as teachers, we said we will have a life, professional life career of 40 years. But as the life expectancy span is increasing, our students will have to work for at least 50 years. They graduate at the age of 20, 21, they will work till the age of 70. And they will be working in those technologies which are not known today. And yet we are producing students. So whatever we teach is going to become obsolete. So we have to be novel, creative in our approach. We have to be adaptive, abruptly switchable thinking. We think of one process and provide alternatives to that process. Like in the gig economy, I have specialized skill sets, I have micro credentials, I have certification. Because I have certification, people will call me for that particular job. So I must have job knowledge in 2 or more domains, because if at that point in time, if that knowledge which I carry is not required by the industry, what do? I have to live my life as a consultant, as an entrepreneur, because that is how people will employ me. So everything is going to get outsourced, and people will say, you deliver this solution. I will put that solution as a patch to my integrated overall solution, to my overall process. So right now also in manufacturing, what people are doing, they are not, companies not manufacturing all the parts. Let's say an automobile company, they are not manufacturing tires, they are not manufacturing mirrors, they are not manufacturing the glass windows or the front shield or the rear shield. So there are certain items which they buy from outside, which are outsourced. In time to come, everything will be outsourced. I just assemble and deliver. Likewise, the services, the applications that I deliver, I will outsource them and deliver. So instead of lifelong learning, I have to build in continuous learning. A BTech student will no longer be a BTech student. He will have to be a general engineer, having knowledge of everything, because his requirement will keep changing radically, which means we have to change our syllabus, our curriculum every year. Every 2 years now, it will be 1 year. And we have, as teachers, have to learn at that pace and then deliver at that pace and facilitate the student learning and understanding. We have to make sure that we provide a design mindset to our students who can think, bring about curiosity, and can also come up with solutions, providing, we say, problem solving skills, but that can happen only if I have computational analytical ability. That should be built in our students. So we should be teaching, what should we be teaching? We should be teaching foundation courses. We should be teaching liberal arts, more of such courses. We should have an entrepreneurial spirit at all times, have the required social intelligence, the intelligent quotient, the emotional quotient, the spiritual quotient, all of it contributing to the practice of an engineer in different circumstances and in different stages in life. We have to, while living in the present, always envision the future. This is how it is going to be. The areas that I need to work on could be genetics, could be energy, could be materials, non-carbon fuels, micro devices. BTech would only be a general degree. I don't think in time to come we will have civil, mechanical, electrical, electronics, computer, IT. It'll just be engineering, general engineering. MTech may become just-in-time kind of knowledge, what is required by the industry then. After that, that MTech will also have no value. Once that era is over, that period of knowledge is over, what use will that MTech be? So I have to keep learning all the time. Yes, PhDs will continue, but PhDs will also become interdisciplinary in nature. More and more interdisciplinary work will happen. Probably in time to come, we will have to include more of liberal arts, life skills, humanities, social sciences in our curriculum. Simply giving them only engineering knowledge will not be enough. Right? So this is last but one slide. Our market is changing, our competition is changing, our engineering is changing, and what are we going to change? Right. So this is a small presentation, and I thought the remaining time we would spend in the Q&A. If you have thoughts, inputs, you want to share something, I will be happy to learn from you. And if you have questions to ask, please do ask. And if I have the answer, I will give you the answer. Or anybody else on the platform has an answer, can also give an answer. Ibrikar sir, I have done with my talk today. If there are questions, I would like to interact and,
If any participants have any questions, please ask your questions.
because I have reserved the time today for thoughts, ideas, people may want to share, people may want to ask.
The question is there in the chat box.
Just
Patil sir, you can read question from chat box.
Sir, the one question is, what is expected when we say communication skills?
yeah, so what communication skills means today is that how I present myself. Now I'm maybe in different roles today. I may be an engineer, but I'm playing a role of, or I've given the job of a sales engineer, right? Or I've given the job of marketing engineer, or I'm in the R&D engineering domain. So what communication skills actually refers to is my personality and my ability to communicate. How do I write an email to someone as an R&D in charge of what information I'm looking for and what help I need, or whatever product or service I have developed, can I be of help to somebody else and sell my R&D to somebody else? So communication and presenting oneself correctly helps to build at least, I would say 90% of the battle is won if you are able to communicate well. So it is all about personality development, that communication skills. When you talk of personality development, communication skills is one of the traits. It also talks about, time management, etiquettes, my manners. So if I'm able to present well and able to communicate well, what I can explain in one sentence, I should not explain in one paragraph. What I can explain in one word, I should not explain in one sentence. So how well I'm able to convey what I want to tell to the other person. And not only convey, that person also understands what I actually mean by what I want to say. That is equally important. So I think this is very, very, necessary in one's life, that because unless we communicate, the future is very bleak.
Sir, I have a simple question. You have mentioned the importance of humanities in technology, science, and nowadays the education is changing all over the world. All the great institutions, universities in outside countries are emphasizing the importance of humanities in all technological courses. If we ask a simple question to our students, which branch are you from? Their answer is mechanical. So of course, when it comes to communication, it is not mechanical. Their answers are good. getting mechanical, all the, okay, this is the, right? So of course, it hurts us when we hear some kind of such kind of answers. So I think mechanization has importance, but humanizing mechanization is getting importance nowadays, and it has to be even more importance.
Yes, yes, I fully agree with you. Fully agree with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If any other participants have any questions, please ask your questions. We have sir with us, Dr. Ahuja sir with us. Surely you will be enlightened with your answer, with the questions and with the answers. So of course we have such a personality who can surely help us
Hello, sir.
develop our insights.
Hello.
So, partly coming back to your answer, when we talk of, humanities, and then when we say that we are going to work in teams, and in teams where I'm going to be a leader in one of the teams, and I'm going to be a team member or a team player in another team. So, I'm going to be a part of the team. So how is it that I would learn to respect, the views of others? How do I respect the culture of others? Right? I come from a different culture, different religion, different background. So it is providing respect, to each culture, to each religion, working in teams, and moving on together as a team. I mean, yes, I make my point, but ultimately, what is good for the team will be decided by the team. So that is how it is. So humanities and certainly plays a very important role, as you rightly said. I fully endorse and agree to your view. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Sir.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sir, is there any requirement to add foreign languages in course structure?
We have introduced foreign languages in our course structure, being autonomous institute. And the reason for doing this is because many students aspire to be in different parts of the world. I went to Japan in 2019, October 2019. And to my surprise, the average age of a Japanese is 46 years. They are aging, they are growing old. And they said that we have jobs, hundreds and thousands and lakhs of jobs, but we don't have people. To whom should we provide jobs? We don't have Japanese students. All those who are there are already got jobs, and there are more openings, but we don't have people. And they say, so we are inviting people from other countries. And they said that we prefer Indians because Indian culture is quite similar to the Japanese culture. So we prefer Indians. Now, if an Indian has to go and work in Japan, he must know Japanese language. If an Indian student goes and works in Germany, he must know the German language. So each country is proud of its language, and they use that language for educating students. But they also educate students in English. But the mode of communication, the mode of learning by and large, is the language of the country. Although in our country we say Hindi is our national language, we still converse, we still teach in English. And that is one of the reasons why AICT this year, for the first time, has introduced undergraduate program to be taught in vernacular language, in the local regional language. If everything in Japan is to be taught in Japanese, everything in France is to be taught in French, if everything in Germany has to be taught and learned in German language, then we need to know those languages. So we provide for those languages in our curriculum today because we don't know where they will go and serve, but they have a choice of learning some other language. So they do learn. Like in the school, when we went to school, we learned Hindi and Marathi. We were taught in English. I give my example, but I was also taught Hindi language and Marathi language. So this is how it is. But we have to provide a flavor of these languages. Why? Because we feel that if our students need jobs and if they have to go to a different soil, a different country, they must know that language of that country.
Thank you, sir. I'm fully satisfied with your answer. Sir, it's not question, but it's just my view that environment studies must be added in all course structure for the study of the students. Sir.
Environment.
Studies must be added in all course structures. Sir.
Yes, we have already
All
added.
people must be familiar that.
We have already added. It is there in our curriculum. I mean, as far as COEP is concerned, it is very much there.
Sir,
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
thank
much,
you, sir. Thank you for eye-opening and informative session. And I have got one question with me. Before that, I would like to welcome Dr. B.M. Naik, sir, who attended this program, as well as Professor V.S. Hendre, who are the speakers of this particular program. So I have one question, sir. Since we are facing pandemic situation and there are a lot of challenges in education system, as far as evaluating students is most challenging task. So can you highlight on evaluating students in online mode?
We have to use a platform which is secure and safe. That is the first precondition if you are assessing our students online. We have to be smart enough to assess our students in a manner that we ensure that whatever are the course outcomes, what we expect our students to learn, can be understood from that answer to a given question. Now, in the online mode, there are two important parameters. One is using a safe and secure browser, as I said, an LMS for evaluating the students. And the second aspect is that we don't want our students to cheat, to copy. We want them to attempt the paper on whatever they have, on the basis of whatever they have understood and learned from whatever the teacher has taught. And that is why we say that we need to teach ethics and values also. Keep repeating the ethics and values so that students realize that if I don't know, I should not answer, but I should not copy. It's better I don't answer, but I should not copy. But somehow that has not percolated. So eventually what happens is that students start to cheat. So we need a proctoring mechanism, which means we provide a solution where the student has to keep the camera on, and the student will be attempting the online exam. And while the student is attempting the online exam, the camera is capturing the movements of the students in a frame. Let's say that frame could be every 10 seconds, 15 seconds. It captures the movement of the student. And then with this proctored solution, making use of AI, if you are able to capture all the entire video, a frame every 15 seconds, and then using AI, we are able to decide that yes, this student was having movements which suggest that he was copying. Only those can come up to the examiner, and then we have to make sure that for those students, we reevaluate those students, assessing them after they have given the exam by an online question answer session. The student comes in front of the camera and then you ask him some questions on the same syllabus and also the same questions if required, and try and understand how much he has understood, because the camera suggests that he has copied. But we are not very sure, but the movements of the student suggest that. So we have to have a robust proctoring system, which is very expensive today. There are people who provide, but it is expensive. But if we as teachers change our thought process and examine our students in such a way that the question based or asked of student is not an open book, but an open internet type of question. That means you ask the student a question and you say, okay, you can take a book, you can surf the net, but you have to give your own answer. The unfortunate part is that we as teachers are still not trained in setting questions which could be of open internet type, which means if I have 80 students in the class, all 80 students will come up with their own answer, because the question is so framed that I have to give my own answer. I can go to the net, I can surf the book, I can surf the net, but ultimately the question is so framed that I have to give my analysis, my interpretation of that scenario. So then I'm able to judge every student's thought process and thinking to a given question, which means I too have to read. In any case, even in the earlier pattern, I was in the offline exam, which was paper and pen based. Student used to write, I used to read. So now also I read, but I read even if he has copied from the net. Ultimately, the end result is the inference, the analysis of the situation that I have presented to the student. Right, but that is very, very difficult. Teachers need to be trained in that. So what we have done at our institute, we have said that yes, every teacher can ask objective questions, but those objective questions will be limited to only 40% of the total weightage of the examination. If I have to ask a question, then the teachers are expected to set at least 4 or 5 sets of questions on unit 1, unit 2, whether it is objective or subjective type of question. So it is like, if you recall, our students who go for the 12th standard CET exam, after 12th standard CET examination, my co-student sitting next to me, I am having type A of the paper, he is having type B. Syllabus is the same, which means we as teachers have to set 4 or 5 sets of question papers. And then we use the Moodle platform. All teachers at COEP use Moodle. So we jumble the questions. So there are 5 sets of questions papers, or minimum 4 sets of question papers. The questions are also jumbled. So what will come to me as question 1A, maybe question 3B for another student at some other point in time. And then we have also put the navigation of, I have to answer that question now, whatever be my answer. Even if I copy or whatever, if my answer, once I finish answering that question, I say submit, I cannot go back to the question and then change the answer. So that is up to 40%. Remaining 60% is subjective and problems. And after the exam is over, students are given 10 minutes to upload their solutions, the rough work that they have done to arrive at that solution. So we have to look at the rough work and see whether the steps are followed. His answer or her answer may be wrong, but the steps followed are correct. I may give 4 out of 6 for that particular problem. If this is a subjective question, student has to type. I will read and decide. But then we as teachers have to become smarter and understand that whatever the student has typed, has he copied from the internet and pasted there, or this is his own language? So it is very difficult today, but we have to find ways and means of, being more smarter than the students. Teachers have to be smart, otherwise they cannot be teachers. So we have to be different today in the way in which we evaluate our students. But it's a Herculean task.
Thank you, sir.
Have I
Thank you.
answered your question?
Any other questions so far? Any other question, participants, quickly?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Sir, I have posted one question in chat box.
Let me see.
Should I read out? My question was, sir, will there be regional language impact on future engineering?
Will there be?
Impact of regional language on future engineering.
Now, impact could be positive, impact could be negative. What are you looking at?
Sir, on the positive side, but obviously.
Yeah. So to keep the answer short, I am a student from a rural place in Maharashtra. I take admission at COEP and I am taught in the vernacular language, our regional language, Marathi. So I understand from the teacher the concepts in Marathi. There are certain words which will remain. Artificial intelligence will remain artificial. I don't think we should be able to substitute. We can, but we should not substitute that. Machine learning, the word used by the teacher in class would remain machine learning. Right? So the teaching would be in the local language where it helps me, empowers me to understand that subject better, because that is a language that I have, medium of instruction in which I have learned up to class 12. So it simplifies my learning ability and it fortifies my understanding of a concept, of a fundamental, which the teacher is trying to explain in a language which I understand easily. But the engineering words will remain, technology words will remain as they are. And more importantly, although I have been taught in the vernacular language, for the simple reason because it will help me in understanding the concepts of engineering in a better way, because it is the language that I understand easily. We as institutes have to take on this additional responsibility of also teaching them English and also improving their personality, skills and traits in the period of 4 years. So although we will be teaching in Marathi, in 4 years, we have to make sure that I teach that boy or girl English language so that when he goes out, he is equally competent. His concepts he has understood in Marathi, but he speaks well and communicates well in English at the end of 4 years and is able to, take up a job with a multinational. But we don't want to create students who take up jobs. Our vision is to create students who become entrepreneurs. So he should become an entrepreneur who can go and sell his product anywhere in the globe and is equally competent, because his understanding has happened in Marathi language, but we have equally taught him English in those 4 years of his career or her career. So I think this vernacular language is only an empowerment. See, in a country like ours, with 29 states, we have so many languages. Unlike France, Germany, Japan, one country, one language. Here we have so many languages. We don't allow everyone to learn in Hindi. So this is how it is. So we have to move on with times and empower the people in the region in which we live, the state which we live.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Any other questions? Quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I would not mind learning from others if others also have answers to these questions. Because
Yes,
if someone can add a new dimension to our thought process, I will also learn in the process.
yes, kind of you, sir. Anyone sharing their views or ideas or answers to previously asked questions quickly? No? Sir, the American author and the psychophysicist Carl Sagan has said, we make the world significant by the courage of our questions and the depth of our answers. And of course, we have experienced this thought in this session, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much once again
Thank
for
you.
valuable time,
No, no,
for
no.
intellectual insights on future of engineering and engineering the future. We are glad and we are privileged to have you, sir, with all the FDPs, all these 3 programs. We thank our Eureka sir also for inviting you and making you available for all the participants also.
So we must thank you and Hebrikar sir and the Institute for giving us an opportunity to share our thoughts and interact with the participants, because it is this interaction that also brings about learning and churning.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Individually, I may not have answers to all the questions, but collectively we all have answers to all questions. So it's learning for me also. And I would like to thank each one of you today for patiently listening to me and hearing me out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So can
Thank
we
you,
have
sir.
a photograph with you? Just quick
Yes, sir.
photo.
Yes. Yes, sir.
All the participants, please.
My camera is on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sure. All the participants, please switch on your cameras.
So in addition to switching on cameras, you also have to put on a smile on your face.
Yeah, true, sir. True.
So
Yeah, right.
participants should not look. I can afford to be stressful because I have to talk, but you can certainly, you're on the receiving end, you can always be smiling.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ahuja sir, all the participants. Yeah, we will call it a day. If you can take leave, sir, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.